You are watching Call for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Sunday, January 14th, 2024, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're here to read the fourth and final letter from the latest Dear Holmes case that we've been working on, called The Stolen Relic. Let me check in with the chat here. Professor B says, let's see if the bird did it. Well, those of you who have been following along with this case knows that I am Team Bird, and Team Bird seems to have been pretty well confirmed in the last letter. But Watson did give us a set of questions, and I'm not sure we have confident answers for all of them. So we're going to review that before we read today's letter and get everyone on the record. Before we do, let's do a little bit of bookkeeping. Last week, we finished, after 12 sessions of playing The Hidden Listener from Cozy Killer, totaling about 40 hours. We then had a special 2-hour, just pure discussion, a separate scheduled live stream where we just discussed the case and the system and reviewed it full of spoilers, which was appropriate for such a big case. And I've just posted my 20-minute review of the game on YouTube. So if you played along with us, I hope you will check out that review. Leave your thoughts on it, what you thought. It wasn't a feel-good review. I didn't feel great recording it. I have mixed feelings about the game. I want to see more games like that, more ambitious games. I like the long games. But we had lots of problems with it, and I hope I did a reasonably fair job of critiquing it. Okay, so that was last week. Tomorrow, we're going to be playing, finally, The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hanks. This is a puzzle game made by a company that has several games in this same world of this Hanks Gazette of some, I think the premise is some eccentric person, but it's a very highly regarded puzzle game. It's the one that our most serious puzzle person on the channel, Nicola, has been itching to play. So we're going to play that tomorrow. It may take us more than one session. Not going to be 12, though. Maybe 2 sessions, but maybe 1, maybe 2. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be different from normal puzzle games we've played. It's not going to be dark murder serial killers. It's going to be much more lighthearted. Okay, there's that. And then I think we'll probably try to play something else this week as well. Maybe a Deadbolt Mystery Society game. Maybe the last Cryptic Killers that we haven't played. Maybe Suspects. Maybe the Vandermist Diaries or the Medusa Report, 2 brand new cold case games that just got delivered. Next week, at our Sunday 3 p.m. time, we will not be playing a play-by-mail game. Instead, I'll do another game developer diary next week, talking about High and Low, the New York City noir narrative mystery game that I've been working on. I've got a bunch of new stuff to talk about. I'm debating whether to have an episode purely talking about the software that I've been writing to support the game. But lots of new ideas have been churning about related work to High and Low. And we've got a case that's half finished being written by Martinez that I've been helping edit and work on a bit. And another member of the Discord chat has written a finished case for High and Low, written with some AI that promises to be an interesting experience. not a polished case, but a experimental case. We may play that this week. So lots of interesting developments there. I do hope you'll be able to join me next weekend for the update, the next developer diary. Okay, anything else to talk about? I don't think so. I think we're ready to go. Okay. Let us look at our questions here before we open the solution. Let's remind ourselves what Watson originally asked us to figure out. By what means did the saint's finger make its departure from the confines of Oakvale Chapel? Who might have been so audacious as to abscond? So who took it and how? I think we know that. I think now we know that the page boy, Teddy, is the young criminal mastermind, and he has used a bird to do it. If you're just joining this stream and you haven't watched the other sessions, this was going to make no sense. You should just leave. Come back and watch after we're done. Okay, so but I think we know the answer to number one. Now, number two is trickier. In what undisclosed location might the sacred reliquary now lie? So I think we're going to have to talk about theories of this. If this wasn't asked of us, we would not offer a suggestion. In other words, it's not something that we have a definitive, that we even have a suggested place for. We know who took it. We just don't know where it might be, and no real hints about where it might be. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'd like to hear if anyone has any theories about that. And then 3 is, cursed or not is Sir Henry's life as he claims in peril. So if we start at that last one first, we did get some information at our last letter that someone is drugging him, right? They did an examination of the sarsaparilla that he drinks at night and found laudanum in it. We don't think laudanum's a poison. I shouldn't say I suspect, we should certainly have looked it up, but I believe it was looked up, that this is maybe a sleeping pill. So the only question is, can we look that up? Can someone look up? I mean, it seems like that's one of those things that if you were the detective in the case and you're like, oh, we found some chemical in his drink, and then the prosecutor gets up and you're on the stand and is like, and when you did the research, did you find it was poison? And the detective says, we didn't actually look it up. I'm not sure. Maybe it was poison. Maybe it was just sleeping pills. So, oh, that's right. Laudanum is a derivative of opium. It's an opiate, as they say. Okay, so I believe it's just to put him to sleep. We're not sure exactly who put it there. He says in a previous letter, only my wife knows where I keep it. So I suspect the wife is just putting it in there to help him sleep so he won't wake her up. If anyone has any different theories about that, let me know. The alternative theory, of course, is that the culprit could have the thief could have put that in there to make him sleep soundly so that they could steal it. But if I had to guess, I would guess that it's totally unrelated to our case. DJ Moneycut says, can we look at the kids drawing again? Yes, absolutely. Let's just finish answering this. So I'm going to get on record that his life is definitely not in peril, and that his wife put the sleeping medicine in his sarsaparilla, the opium, just to help him sleep longer, have a better sleep so he doesn't disturb her. As a backup theory, I guess I would guess that it was put in there to help him, to keep him asleep during the theft. But I just think that that's unnecessary. And he claims only the wife knows where it is. So that's why I picked the wife. Rob says that laudanum contains 10% powdered opium by weight, prepared by dissolving extracts from the opium poppy in alcohol, reddish brown in color and extremely bitter. Okay, All right, let's look at the kids' drawings, and then we'll talk about our theory and where you think it might be stored. Okay, here is the kids' drawing. Oh, what's happening? There we go. All right, so I want to point out what we think here. First of all, this was found in on the property, no attribution, but it looks like it's a kid's writing, and we think that the kid has got spelling errors, like he's misspelled berries, and he's misspelled fetch. But this appears to be about like training a bird, like you give the bird one berry, clap and caw, two berries, short whistle, flies, two claps, hop, whistle, fetch. Like he's training this bird. That's what we think. Then if you look, you see a little bit of pirate, parrot, lots of dreams of a ship, but also look closely. This bird and this bird seem to be carrying in their beak what looks like the size and shape of the reliquary that could be holding the saint's finger. So this sure looks like kids' drawing of a plan to steal it and maybe sail away. Does the kid have access to a boat? It's a great question. He seems to be thinking of boats. I don't believe we've heard anything about a boat or water of any sort. So there's that. The boat is a light. Near the boat is a lighthouse. It's true. I guess if you tell this story, you might say, like, there's the cloud, there's the boat, here's the bird has brought the reliquary to him on a boat, and the boat is docked by a White House. Rob says berries. Are we sure about that? Isn't the numbers the names of the two different birds? I don't think so, but maybe. I don't think so. I think this is him saying, if you give it two berries, this is what happens. This is the reward for that, or something like that. It doesn't seem like whether there's one bird, two bird. I don't think we have any information about any of that. This kid, Teddy, fancies himself a detective, and he's investigating around. We've seen him with a feather in his hat. We've seen him talking about magpies being spirits. All kinds of stuff that makes him suspicious and makes him our culprit. He's a very clever boy. And I did want to point out. So let me recap the answers to those questions as options, I guess. So it's clear to me, it feels clear to me that Teddy the page boy has used a trained bird to steal the reliquary. What we believe is that he attached the croquet ball to braces. He threw it a couple times, climbed up the tree, threw it a couple times, got the window broken, then sent the bird to get the reliquary and bring it back. That's how it was stolen. Now, at our last letter, we heard one of the two maids confess to lying about what she did the previous night. Remember, she was seen bringing the croquet ball back, and in the last letter, she confesses to breaking the window, and she tells us this story. Right, this is letter 1. She tells us this a really unbelievable story once she seems to be caught out. How she brought one of the watchmen some liquor. They went off to the outskirts. She said, "Let me show you how hard I can hit this." She hit it, it disappeared. Then she came back to the house, and it turned out she ran into the page boy. And it turned out she broke the window, and the page boy and her agreed not to tell anyone. When we read this, our interpretation is that that she like lured one of the footmen out away from the place and plied him with drink, and that she's in on it. So that's our current working theory, that not Jane, but the other one, Flora, is involved in this, working with Teddy. But I guess it occurred to me that an alternate theory is that this harebrained story of her hitting the croquet ball, which seems to us to defy physics, she could just be a naive person, and it could be that Teddy saw the ball come in and told her she broke the window and she somehow believed it. But that just seems unbelievable to me. So I think she's in on it with Teddy, and then Teddy has given her back the ball to put away. And there's evidence that the ball was used to break the windows. We saw the pock marks, multiple pock marks, etc. And I think one of the questions that we could answer is, are they all in on it? Is Jane, the other maid, also in on it? And I wanted to point out this exculpatory piece of dialogue. We're talking to them. This is before Flora confesses. And Jane is all excited. And she says, Jane answered excitedly, "We celebrated Jarvis's birthday. We were out on the lawn playing games all day on the 1st. Thank heavens Miss Jenkins reminded us to stow away the croquet mallets and all before we left for the village. Isn't that right, Flora?" Flora laughed sheepishly as the tall maid went on. There was a lot of rain that night, too. So, in other words, in a previous letter, Flora had claimed that they had forgot to put everything away, and that's why she was out on the night of the theft picking up the croquet ball and mallet. And after this is when she confesses to us, okay, I lied about me picking up the stuff on that day. So I think the fact that Jane is oblivious to all this and is saying, hey, remember when we put everything away, invalidating Flora's excuse. So I think this tells us that Jane is cleared. Veggie Dog says, Flora also lied when she claimed she was sweeping up leaves when left alone in the chapel. There was only dust and cobwebs in there at the time. The leaves came through the broken window the next day. So she screwed up her timeline. That's interesting. Not sure I followed that. I did want to, okay, so I think it's Flora and Teddy working together, but you could try to claim that it's just Teddy. Now, I wanted to, on the subject of where is the reliquary, I wanted to point out a couple of possibilities, possible answers. Answer one is it's just in Teddy's house. He lives in a house on the outskirts of the property. That would be the most sort of non-specific answer. It's on Teddy's property somewhere. Another possibility is what I think it was Anna or someone was suggesting at the beginning of today's session, that Teddy is hiding it on his boat or in this lighthouse where it's docked. I don't remember any boat or water, so that seems a little odd. But that is a place that looks like it's being drawn, so that's possible. But I did want to mention a couple other things I noticed. Let's see. So an early theory was that it was in the candelabra. I don't feel like we have any evidence of that, except that Teddy is seen hanging out in the chapel even after the theft. He walks in. Here he is sharing his luncheon with the birds, chuckling at their antics. He really likes this. But he goes into the chapel, and the footmaid said, the footman says, "Stop going in the chapel, I keep telling you." So he does spend some real time in the chapel. The the boy Teddy. And then there was something else as well. Here's another mention of leaves. I'm not sure we really understand the leaves. I heard leaves rustling louder and louder, but it wasn't a spirit, just Teddy. This is when he holds the croquet ball and claims to Flora that she broke the window. This is the only part that makes me think is Flora really not involved in this? She just assumes she broke the window? That just seems unlikely, but it's possible that Flora is not involved and she's just afraid to get blamed for breaking the window. I did want to point out something else with that, where another place that Teddy went. Let me see if I can find it here. He is on the outskirts of the property. Here's another mention of leaves. We did find some glass the day the relic went missing, and a few leaves. Is that just leaves from the bird? I'm not sure what the mention of leaves are. They hear a whistle outside and was reminded of the hound. I think the whistle they're hearing is Teddy calling the birds. I do want to find the mention of here. I think. Okay, so here's my last possibility for where the reliquary is. So here is Teddy strolling out of the chapel and laughing at us. And Jenkins says, I told you to keep out of there. And he says, I'm looking around to see if I can find a clue. So he thinks he's so clever. He may have actually hid it back in the chapel just in case someone searches his property, it won't be found. That's possible. He's talking about the magpies. Okay, here. This is the last part. Okay. I told the boy to run along, and he skipped away to a boulder between the house and the chapel, where he sat and remained scribbling on a pad. So what we're seeing here is him working on that drawing, I believe. But I also wonder, is it possible that he's hid the reliquary here at the boulder between the house and the chapel? So if I had to guess answers, if I was writing Watson and telling him where to look for the reliquary, I would say, first search Teddy and his property, then search the boulder, then search the chapel, the candelabra, look for places that Teddy could be hiding it to be clever, and then look in birds' nests. All right. Do you think you would be able to do a dedicated video for complete beginners recommending beginner-friendly games to try? I'm absolutely going to make a video like that very soon. Keep your eye open for it. A sort of where to get started. I did make a video a little while ago about so you want to try a narrative mystery detective game, but I am going to make another one. Anna says, maybe he is a little Moriarty, leaving clues to the detectives, being cheeky and thinking they won't catch him anyway. I agree with that. I do think he is up to such a thing. Discussion of Flora. The question is, why lie about what she was doing? I suspect some sort of prep work that would help the bird pick up the reliquary. Didn't she say she lied because she was having drinks with the guy? No, she lied because she broke the window. She thinks she broke the window. I mean, she either lied because she's involved in this, distracting the footman, or she lied because she doesn't want to get caught breaking the window if she's innocent. In the scheme where she's innocent, she's gone off to have a drink just as she said. She thinks she broke the window, so she's so that's why. But I think she is involved, but that would be the theory if she isn't, that she's being manipulated by the boy and just doesn't want to get caught breaking the window. There is also another little mystery of the dog. When we asked them, hey, that dog's, I assume he's a pretty good watchdog, the two maids look at each other suspiciously. So I think it's going to turn out in our solution that there's something up with the dog. Either I think, well, let me make a guess, actually. I think Flora must have taken the dog something. Look, I want to point this out again, because I did think this was quite interesting. He asked about the dog, where he's reminded of the dog. Though he heard a whistle, the mastiff outside, I said. I presume him to be a good watchdog. Did he bark that night or alert you to anything in the days before the artifact vanished? Jane said no, then shot a glance at Flora. Everything has been quiet here for a week, no visitors. So I think what's happened here is Jane is shooting a glance at Flora because Flora did something with the dog. And Jane just doesn't want to tell on her. I don't think Jane is involved, but they know there is some reason why the dog didn't bark. Does anyone have a theory about that? Rom says maybe they tied the relic around the dog's neck. Well, we have no evidence for that, but even if that was the case, that doesn't answer this question. Why are they acting suspicious when he asks if the dog alerted you to anything the day before the artifact vanished? I think it's because Flora did something with the dog, and Jane is not involved, but doesn't want to tell on her. Perry says the dog was given laudanum and snoozing. That's a pretty good guess, actually. I like Perry's idea. They gave the dog the sleeping powder. Professor B says dogs don't usually bark at people they know well. That's true, but the broken glass, a bird flying in, you would think they would bark at the bird. Regardless, whether you think the dog would bark at a stranger or not, that's not the point. The point is that they are acting suspiciously about it. That's what you have to answer. You don't even have to answer why the dog didn't bark. You just have to answer why is she shooting a glance towards Flora when he asks if the dog barked. So I think she's looking at her because they either gave the dog the opium, that's a pretty good guess, or Flora did something else. All right. Is there anything else the chat wants to get on the record? Does anyone want to get on the record with any differences of opinion before we open the solution and read it? Dennis says, let's see the solution. Professor B says, go for it. Okay, here we go. Okay, looks like we got 3 pages. What is the order here? We've got a letter from Sherlock Holmes to what? Oh, they're all part of the same thing. Okay. All right. This is a long solution. So get settled in. Time to get on the record if you have any disagreement with anything I've summarized. Harry says, I gotta know if it's a bird or not. Well, it's surely a bird. It's only the details of where is the reliquary. And I'm not sure about, and who else is in on it with the page boy. Okay, here we go. From the desk of Sherlock Holmes, 221B Baker Street, 8 July 1887. My dear Watson, this has been an eventful series of days for all. By now, there is a chance the saint's finger might have already been found. Nevertheless, I am pleased to say that I have sorted this case out. Should the relic remain absent, I will of course include instructions on how best to proceed. However, first I shall provide you with a careful accounting of my method, for there was more than one mystery to be unraveled at Oakvale Manor. From the moment I read Lady Bellamy's description of the saint's finger, I knew her case would be deceptively complex. Its disappearance from a locked room suggests a supernatural agency, especially in the minds of the younger servants. However, as men of science, we permit no mystical explanations. A historic silver reliquary, decorated with a number of diamonds, was obviously something worthy of a burglar's time, and while the supposed family curse might have frightened Sir Bellamy, such superstitions would likely fail to deter a thief. In fact, many of the sorts of collectors who would be keen to own such an object would consider its contentious nature a valuable feature. Lady Bellamy's missive contained several curious details which left me suspicious of a limited group of people, namely, the Bellamys themselves and their two footmen, Jarvis and Edward. Based on the information provided by Lady Bellamy, she herself had suggested displaying the relic before it went missing. After learning this, one might wonder, was she trying to ensure that it would be taken? The information in the Bellamy's first letters indicated to me that this was unlikely, but possible. Her interest in using the saint's finger to generate funds did seem sincere, and she did not hesitate before admitting that she had suggested it should be displayed, but she could have simply offered up the confession as a blind. Moreover, Lady Bellamy could have been working in tandem with her cousin Edward, who seemed loyal to her personally rather than the estate. In her letter, she had neglected to mention he was her relative, only offering support for the young footman. Yet, if his associate Jarvis left him alone the evening the relic went missing, then he had the opportunity to retrieve it and conceal it. He could have done this of his own accord, or at Lady Bellamy's behest, I thought. But in either case, his modus operandi was still unclear, for it would have been nearly impossible for him to use the window without both harming himself in the process and being in cahoots with Jarvis, which seemed rather unlikely. On the other hand, there was Sir Bellamy, who was acting and reacting strangely, in spite of the circumstances. The fact it was he who had demanded the relic be displayed only in the chapel, after opposing an exhibition in the first place, was curious. Perhaps he actually wanted it to be displayed there to facilitate its theft, or he believed a place most holy would counteract the supposed curse. It was also suspiciously fortunate that he insisted on viewing the relic the morning after it disappeared, despite a lack of necessity. He could have orchestrated the event to feign innocence and sneakily absconded with the relic, especially if he enlisted the help of his footman Jarvis, as Inspector Mercer accused. This, I thought, was implausible, unless both of the footmen were collaborating, which again seemed unlikely, as it would suggest a far more elaborate conspiracy than would be required for the Bellamys to steal their own relic. Still, there were moments unaccounted for that cast a suspicious light on Jarvis and Sir Bellamy. Lady Bellamy left the chapel with Edward upon discovering the saint's finger was absent, and he returned to the chapel before she did. On her return, she witnessed Jarvis's confession and Sir Bellamy subsequently berating the footman. Lady Bellamy could have missed a part of their conversation, which is to say, there was a possibility that Sir Bellamy was then conspiring with the footman. Though suspicious of him, I admit that the information in his letter dated 5 July ultimately argued his innocence. Plainly speaking, had he orchestrated the theft of his relic, he would have left behind evidence suggesting a tangible culprit, and I doubt he would have wasted time lamenting nightmares and curses. Beyond this, Sir Bellamy's letter indicated to me that another mystery was at play. The fact his sarsaparilla had been making him sleepy of late was unusual, and especially alarming in light of the relic's overnight theft. So too was the man's fixation on the inspector, Andrew Mercer. Was Bellamy anxious because Mercer presented a threat he could sense but not perceive? Or was he simply upset with the man's methods of inquiry? Mercer's own letter, dated 6 July, helped answer this question. To begin with, the inspector admitted he was familiar with Sir Bellamy since his childhood, and that he has known Lady Anne for years. He also had many saccharine words to say of her, though this itself proved nothing beyond familiarity between the two. Though I surmised a suspiciously close acquaintance between Lady Bellamy and the inspector, I did not believe Sir Bellamy was threatened by, or even aware of it. He would not have confided his fears regarding the sarsaparilla to Inspector Mercer if this was the case. The inspector's letter also stated that Jarvis snuck away in the middle of the night, when he ought to have been guarding the relic with Edward. Although Lady Bellamy had previously reported this, Mercer's account of his exchange with the footman was telling. Jarvis turned red in the face when his associate noted his unusually timed meal that evening, yet he had no problem admitting to, even defending, his affinity for liquor. In other words, he was presumably bothered by Edward's anecdote, though not because of the fact he had been caught drinking. I predicted accurately, I should now say, that Edward's revelation would lead us to another secret of his, something involving the other servant, Flora. Per Mercer's letter, the butler had spotted her sneaking back into the manor on the night the relic went missing. He said she was drenched but oddly happy, clutching a croquet ball and a small rag. Of course, Flora provided an excuse for herself, claiming Mr. Jenkins had been mistaken about the evening in question, but she provided no evidence in support of her claim and could have easily been lying. If she had been lying, then it was worth noting that Jarvis's trip for bread and cheese that evening had been neatly aligned with her rainy stroll. In either case, Mr. Jenkins, I thought, was right. Flora sneaking in with her croquet ball in hand was a mighty unusual sight. Inspired by the butler's repeated complaints of missing braces, I hypothesized Flora could have employed a small expedient catapult to break the chapel's window that night, thereby aiding somebody, Jarvis, in the theft of the relic. This theory was quickly discarded, for Flora had many easier ways of accessing and stealing the saint's finger. And even if she had wished to steal it via the chapel window, why would she have broken the window in such an elaborate way? She could have simply tossed a stone or the croquet ball she possessed at the time, rather than steal garments from somebody and engineer a catapult. While she could have been party to the crime, it seemed unlikely she had anything to do with Mr. Jenkins' missing items. At this stage, I suspected she was harboring a secret relationship with Jarvis, but barring the existence of a fairly large conspiracy, I could not yet fathom how either of the pair could have succeeded in taking the saint's finger. More confusing still Mercer's closing statements appeared to implicate the Bellamys again. Mercer's note concerning the relic's insurance gave a clear reason to believe Sir Bellamy, if not his latest wife, would have wanted the object gone. Sir Bellamy's sarsaparilla and his recently resulting sleepiness also presented an interesting development, especially when one considers the fact that he, but not his wife, reported the recurring issue. Now, if his tonic was indeed tampered with, either his wife had to have done it or one of the servants did, after finding out where it was stored. This knowledge, the sarsaparilla's place of storage, could have been facilitated by either of the Bellamys, knowingly or not, which complicated the matter of identifying a culprit. Putting that aside, the timing and extent of Sir Bellamy's symptoms were unexpected. The tonic, if it was indeed poisoned, had been making the man drowsy for some days now, with no adverse effects beyond those of evening lethargy. It is perhaps admissible that Lady Bellamy might have drugged her husband, taken the key, crept out to the chapel, stolen the relic, and discreetly returned the key. However, to do so she would have had to work with Edward or avoiding alerting the mastiff. She, too, would have risked encountering Jarvis, who is faithful to his master. One must also ask why, if she wished to steal the item, did she not do so in the previous years, when she could have removed it from its trunk and said nothing of it? Therefore, my suspicion was that his somnolence, whether inflicted or imagined, was unrelated to the theft. I would suggest another reason for the altered tonic after reviewing your latest letter, Watson, but holding Mercer's letter alongside those from the Bellamys, I was compelled to agree with the inspector's last intuition. No person could have entered the chapel to take the relic. There were no secret passages through which to gain admittance, and the walls and roof were sound. The door's rusty hinges alone would have woken the mastiff or Edward if someone had tried to force the portal open, and neither was roused until Jarvis returned that evening. The door's lock was not damaged, and the key to enter it never left Sir Henry's wrist. The conceit of someone hiding behind the tapestry is a clever one. I have done so many times myself. But as you yourself deduced, it would have been nigh impossible for that person to have made their leave without risking discovery. As an added measure of precaution, let us consider the potential culprits anyways. We know that both maids and pageboy were present at breakfast which the cook prepared. The morning the crime was discovered. This we know from Lady Bellamy, who witnessed them listening to her husband's recitation of his dream. Thus, none of them could have still been hiding in the chapel at the time. The butler, Jenkins, was unaccounted for, but his sheer girth makes it difficult for him to remain concealed behind a tapestry. I also must dismiss the idea of the conspiracy that such a plan would necessitate. The servants have offered no serious grievances against their master, and any collusion among the servants or between Jarvis and the master would have required either Edward's help or his silence. Both are so unlikely that the theory may be safely dismissed. The robbery of the saint's finger, as demonstrated by mounting evidence, was a complex issue, likely involving multiple individuals. And further complicating the case was the fact that several secretive relationships were undeniably at play within Oakvale, some with no apparent connection to the crime. It was your subsequent letter, Watson, that allowed me to discern the significance of these relationships and, in turn, their links, or lack thereof, to the crime. From its beginning, your report of 7 July casts a different light upon several of our key individuals. Inspector Mercer, per his statement, seemed unusually invested in bringing justice forth for the sake of, specifically, Lady Bellamy. He also presented a precise theory for the case, accusing Sir Bellamy and Jarvis of a plot against Lady Bellamy. Based on limited evidence, his theory was admittedly intriguing, especially in light of the Saint's Finger's generous insurance policy. Still, Inspector Mercer's judgment appeared to be clouded by an affinity for Lady Bellamy, or, as he could not help but put it, Annie. Then there was Sir Bellamy, who was definitively removed from my list of suspects by your diagnosis. The aged, ill, and anxious man was too unwell to have orchestrated this plot. So I turned again to the staff, and on reading the details of your conversation with the maids, this knotted mess finally loosened and began to unravel before me. Flora's confession, I posit, was an honest account of the truth, save for one detail for which she bears no responsibility. And therein lies the solution to this case. Flora and Jarvis's secret is but romance, and although Flora believed it to be true, she did not shatter the window to the chapel. Teddy, the page boy, and I should say the specter behind the stolen relic, did. He then exploited a serendipitous late-night opportunity to pass along the blame to an unwitting Flora. Her exchange with Teddy and the drawing you found leaving the manor suggested that the young page boy was at the heart of this inexplicable robbery. My theory was only strengthened when I reconsidered a number of the details in your letter, and the ones previously sent by Inspector Mercer and the Bellamys, with this thought in mind. Teddy the page boy, without a doubt, took the saint's finger, and he did not work alone. To put it briefly, the clever chap dispatched his familiar, a magpie, I wager, to fly through the chapel's broken window and retrieve the saint's finger. One might wonder, but what would possess a page boy to commit a crime so grand and greedy? To that, I say one should look towards Teddy's ailing mother, meager finances, and recently rejected requests for a wage adjustment. The boy hoped to abscond with the relic and obtain a sum which he could comfortably care for his family. His plan had not likely been developed past take the treasure, until learning of the reward for the relic, which you will recall elicited a positive reaction from the boy. As for his methods, they were most easy to understand after examining the page found outside of Oakvale. I am certain that the drawings and writing were Teddy's imaginings for two reasons. First, although an adult might have conceivably misspelt words such as berry or whistle, the childish drawings and penmanship suggest a more youthful, if not whimsical, author. Second, Teddy was seen several times not only scribbling away outdoors, but also feeding the local birds. I am therefore inclined to believe that the writings on that page was a record of the page boy and his magpie's training regimen. And in light of Teddy's penchant for crafting tools, such as his detecting device, I am further inclined to believe the boy fashioned a catapult, as I initially speculated, out of Mr. Jenkins' braces. With this elementary tool, he shattered the window which allowed entry to his avian accomplice, who he then commanded to fetch whatever object he might have used to break it, along with the saint's finger itself. Shortly after this, as he prepared to make his leave, he heard Flora and Jarvis's commotion in the clearing behind the chapel. Fearing somebody would witness him that evening, he hid and waited. When he saw Flora, he took advantage of the opportunity and slyly delivered an explanation for the broken window, one that would absolve him of guilt and eventually even convince Flora that she would be held responsible for the theft. Later on, Mercer spotted the boy eagerly adding a feather to his cap, which he was certainly recovering from the site of his crime. Now I will return to our dear page boy, but beyond his plot to steal the saint's finger and Flora and Jarvis's quiet dalliance, there has been another drama unfolding before our eyes. Watson, your last letter to me concluded with the revelation that a small percentage of laudanum had been detected in Sir Bellamy's bottle of Ayer's sarsaparilla. In this case, I will say that Sir Bellamy was being sound of judgment. I am confident that Lady Bellamy has been tampering with his tonic, though only as a means of deflecting the man's obsession with a true heir. Considering that she had access to the sarsaparilla and successfully added laudanum to it, one must question her intent. She had the opportunity to kill her husband had she wanted, so it is more likely that her goal was to sedate the man, as she accomplished, and to get altogether disable his advances. Knowing, too, that his health is already failing, I would not be surprised if Lady Bellamy is less than patiently awaiting the man's demise. Indeed, she may be doing so while she pursues a new beau in the inspector. For his part, Inspector Mercer's willingness to investigate the sarsaparilla and openly speak of it indicated his innocence to me. In spite of his affinity for Lady Bellamy, he seems unaware of her ploy. Know that I have sent word to my own colleagues at the Surrey Constabulary, and Chief Hastings has agreed to call on Oakvale Manor tomorrow. He will question Lady Bellamy and Inspector Andrew Mercer himself and apprise the Bellamys of what I have told you in this letter. He will also address the laudanum and ensure there is no other cause for alarm insofar as threats to Sir Bellamy's health. Last, as a means of addressing the page boy's recent crimes, he has been so gracious as to agree to a proposition I devised. For this I will need your assistance. If Teddy has not already found and offered up the saint's finger in exchange for the reward, then I suggest locating the boy and informing him that the situation has turned so dire that Sir Bellamy is offering £500, and that you would like to enlist his help in scouring the property again. Then simply leave the boy to his own devices. I assure you he will, by pure chance, surely, happen upon the relic. Once he has done so, or alternatively, if he does not produce the relic, you must confront him with the fact that you are aware of his scheme and present him with two options. 1. You will deliver him to his mother and summon Chief Hastings so that the constabulary and she may determine an appropriate course of action. Or 2. He will cease work as Sir Bellamy's page boy and agree to a new position in London. Your observation was spot on, London. The boy would make an excellent irregular. He would appreciate, even benefit from, having his capabilities acknowledged and encouraged, and we can find much more productive uses for his keen wit than Sir Bellamy or Jenkins will at Oakvale. Explain to him what this might entail and what it would require of him. I suspect he will be somewhat thrilled. Inform him, too, that I will guarantee a salary which he can provide adequate care to his mother, and that Mrs. Hudson has kindly agreed to introduce him to her acquaintance, Mrs. Emeralda Emerson. Mrs. Emerson is known to offer assistance to those less fortunate and would be willing to offer them lodgings free of charge for some months, and later for an exceedingly affordable fee. I expect that Teddy will be rather amenable to this plan, but please do keep me informed of his response regardless of its nature. For now, I must finish my meal here, then imitate the magpie and quickly fly away. Another mystery glitters before me in Canterbury, and it requires my full attention. Very sincerely, yours, Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective. Okay, so before I check in with the chat, let's just point out a couple of things. We posited two possibilities for Flora. One was that she was the willing accomplice. The other one was that she's telling the truth. She went out and hit the croquet ball, and when she came back, Teddy lied to her and said she broke the window. It turned out to be the latter. I thought, in balance, it was more likely the former, but that was within the realm of our considerations. The other thing that was slightly interesting is that we're told that the braces were used as a slingshot, basically, and then the bird had to bring the croquet ball back from inside the window, it sounded like it was saying. That seems unlikely. I like our idea better that... I like our theory much better, actually. In fact, I think Holmes is wrong about this. I think it seems much more likely that the suspenders were used so that the ball would come back after you threw it. I think Holmes was wrong about that. The other thing is that Holmes did not come up with a theory for where the reliquary is being stored. We came up with some possibilities. Holmes has a way to recover it, but he decided not to try to answer that. And then the last thing, well, two last things. One is he thinks the wife is not strictly trying to kill him, but trying to rush him on to death. But Mercer is innocent. And then the other little slightly interesting thing here is that no explanation for the dog. So let me suggest, actually, that this is further confirmation of our long-standing theory that Holmes is not actually writing these letters. Something has happened to Holmes. I believe this is an imposter Holmes. Real Sherlock Holmes would have gone a little deeper. I think we're not dealing with the real Sherlock Holmes. That's something that we've hypothesized for a while now. I think this is more evidence of it. Stepping back, I did think that was very well written and entertaining and pretty nicely done. Okay, let's look in with the chat, see if there's any thoughts here. Rob says maybe Holmes had too much laudanum. DJ Moneycat says, why use a croquet ball at all? There would be rocks everywhere. Yeah, maybe. You know, let me offer an alternative answer to that, though. You'd have to have a pretty heavy rock to throw through a window. He did use the croquet ball, didn't he? Oh, ball was just a decoy to Flora. And that's not quite right, because remember the pock marks with the yellow paint. So actually, he did use the croquet ball, but I think you're right, Rob, that the logic of it is that he could have used anything to break the glass, and he just told Flora she broke it. But the pockmarks on the wall strongly suggest it was the croquet ball. But Holmes didn't pick up on that. I'm not sure why. Veggie Dog says, Flora truly believed that she had smashed a croquet ball so hard that it went out of her sight, broke a window 15 foot in the air at the distance, and she didn't hear the window shattered. Well, yes, that part was kind of crazy. But, you know, maybe she was drunk. She's not so smart. Okay. And it says, have to go. Mostly a good ending, but ours was better. I did enjoy this story, actually, quite a bit. Before you go, those of you who have played along with me, these Dear Holmes letters, you remember how this works. You now have to rank this. Where would you put this in the order of the cases we've played? I think I would put this one pretty high up. Maybe, I can't remember the others. I'd have to get them out in front of me. But if you know where you would rank this, let me know. I think second or third. Have we played 4 now? Harry says, this was a fun story. I think the bird solution was highly implausible, but I'm not the writer. This was well developed. I think it was told very well, very manageable amount of clues, there weren't super number of clues hidden, but there were some subtle elements that I liked, and it was all manageable. And I like how extra information leaked out on each letter. I liked the locked room nature, where we had one theory about the candelabra, there was the tapestries. When it all came together, it felt right. At some point, we were like, I think a bird went through that window. And once we latched onto that, the rest made sense, and it was fun figuring out that it was Teddy. Rob says, solution was dumb, but not the worst case yet. The writing was fine. I think the writing was actually very good. I think the writing was very good, better than fine. And it was fun, and I liked the picture at the end. I liked this story quite a bit, actually. The only thing, maybe you could ask for something a little deeper, a little more seated with some clever clues that once we noticed it, we were like, we've caught you. I think this one was more the big clues right out in the open gave it away, rather than some small detail that we spotted. That would be my only real complaint, that the clues were all a little too obvious by the end of it. Nothing super well hidden. For example, the question about where he hid it. Like, it would be nice if there was some little subtle clue that when you go back through the stuff, you're like, oh, okay. That weird thing he did, that's where he was doing, that's where he did it. And I don't think we got any of that, really. Veggie Dog says second or third in terms of enjoyment. Not sure about some inconsistencies in logic to the solution, but fun as always. I do love the format here where we stretch this out over a month and get a chance to talk about it. DJ Moneycut says, I liked it better than the one with the missing dad in the boat. Yes, I would agree with that. I agree that that was our least favorite one, I think. My least favorite one. I still think maybe the original one we played with the bear and the lock provoked so much interesting theories that that might be still my favorite one. Rob says, yeah, the format is great. What were the other one we played? We played one with the bear and the lock, I think was the first one. We played one with the father and the boat. We played this one and one more. What was the other one? I believe there must have been one more. The swallowed diamond, yes. The pottery, I don't know what that means, the pottery. Making where he says the swallowed diamond, yeah. The powder. What was the powder? Is that the same as the diamond one? Or is the powder a different one? Oh, the talcum. So we played two others. We played one with the powder and one with the diamond. I think the diamond and the bear were my favorites. And then the boat treasure at the bottom. Maybe this up there tied with the talcum one. Okay, fun stuff. And why is it fun? The format, everything, but it's also because of you at home playing along with me. You guys make it fun to talk about these things. Okay, next week we'll have a break from the play by mail. I'll have my designer diary update about my game High and Low, narrative mystery detective game film noir set in New York City. I might be talking mostly about the software I've written, some stuff to show you. Then the week after that, we'll play a new case from Dear Holmes. Those of you who are joining me tomorrow will be playing The Curious Elevator of Mr. Hanks. Different kind of puzzle game. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what it has in store. If you like these videos, I hope you'll give them a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let me know if there's a game you want to see played. We've got a Board Game Geek guild for this channel with a thread discussing all the games that are available and a link to a site where you can vote on what you'd like to see us play. I hope you'll check that out. Let me know what games you want to see played most. And lastly, you can join our Discord to talk about all things mystery, cooperative games, etc. I'll see you next time.